Hello, welcome back to the Jeevers Golf Channel. My name is Hans Jeevers. I'm a PGA Tour DFS contributor for Fansided.com and ProGolfNow.com, but I also write for the NFL, the CFL, etc. Of course, the CFL is not being played this year, but I write about football as well. Football is how I learned about fantasy back in the early 90s, back when I had to mail in my lineups each week before the internet. Things have obviously progressed greatly with technology, so we don't have to do that anymore, but I love football, love golf greatly as well. Just thought I'd go over this article that I wrote that is on Fansided, the main site, which of course I can focus on other sports other than just golf as I do with Pro Golf Now. So today we're going to talk about the Sunday night football matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to talk about it from a FanDuel perspective, FanDuel single game slate, not Draftkings. So I do talk about in the article that I wrote that you need to check out the rules if you're not familiar with it. DraftKings has a captain slot for your single game slate, and FanDuel has an MVP slot. They both have the same type of rules regarding point total, 1.5 times the point total. However, on FanDuel, you don't have to pay any more money than you would if they were in a flex spot. So, for example, I'm rolling with Russell Wilson at MVP in this game, and he's 16.5 on the slate, and he's not any more of a cost factor than he would be if he was a flex play. So just keep that in mind if you're utilizing this information for DraftKings showdown slates. So anyway, you couldn't ask for a better matchup from a DFS perspective this evening. One of the reasons I thought I'd jump on here and talk about this real quick. You have the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Seattle to play the Seahawks, and Kirk Cousins is the leader of the Vikings team at quarterback, and he has struggled in primetime games. Will that change today? We will see. Of course, if you're familiar with the Vikings at all, you know that Dalvin Cook is the main leader of this team from the backfield, and he gets a lot of touches from an offensive perspective. So I think personally that Cook is going to get a ton of carries, ton of touches, because time of possession is going to be key. If you want to beat the Seahawks team that has such an outstanding offense, you're going to have to keep them off the field. You can't be throwing the ball consistently and not controlling the clock. So I think Dalvin Cook's going to get the ball quite a bit. I do think Kirk Cousins will have some success through the year when he does have to throw it. There is a chance of rain tonight, 30 to 40% chance of rain. The over-under in this game, the last time I checked, was 57. From an NFL perspective, that's extremely high. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm rolling with Russell Wilson at the MVP slot. The 31-year-old quarterback has simply been playing outstanding so far through 4 games. He has 1,285 yards and 16 passing touchdowns through 4 games. That's an average of 321.25 yards and 4 touchdowns a game. The guy is on an MVP season trajectory right now. So I think he's highly focused to have the best season of his career. And frankly, because the Seahawks defense is 29th in the league, allowing passing yards, he knows he can't stop throwing. He has to keep trying to score. You can't sit on the ball when your defense is that suspect. And that'll be the case again tonight unless rain becomes a huge factor. Regardless, Russell uses his legs. He'll get his points on the ground if he has to, if rain becomes an issue. I would say that I don't mention the flex plays here of a Chris Carson, but if you see a 90% chance of heavy rain, maybe start thinking about a Chris Carson. But I mentioned his statistical totals, and I also mentioned the vulnerability of this Vikings defense. They're certainly not the 1985 Bears, that's certainly for sure. They've currently given up through 4 games 1,167 yards passing. That is good enough for 29th in the league. That's not good, actually. I shouldn't use that word. So I continue to see Wilson playing well in this game versus this bad defense. So he is my captain. He comes into the FanDuel slate at $16,500. First up on my flex play is Dalvin Cook. I just mentioned him earlier. I think he's the key to the offensive strategy of the Vikings in this game. Yes, the Seahawks have been somewhat successful against the run, but you wonder how skewed those numbers are because their passing defense is so horrific that they probably haven't faced a team that's had to run the ball. However, from a strategic standpoint, time of possession is going to be huge, and Dalvin Cook is going to need to be a key for the Vikings. So I'm throwing him in there. He can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. I think he's only caught 7 balls so far, but if they get behind in this game, he'll still be involved, and they'll throw the ball to him out of the backfield. I'm stacking my MVP quarterback with one of his wide receivers, his best wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver in the league. He definitely is, at least from a statistical standpoint, to this point in the season. He leads the league in receiving yards, and his name is DK Metcalf, and he comes in on the slate at $11,000. He's worth every penny of that $11,000. Fade him at your own risk. He has 16 receptions and 3 receiving touchdowns this year. He has been a main target of Russell Wilson. I will say one little interesting stat I did notice, if you're looking to throw in some low-cost plays, if you're playing a bunch of lineups and GPPs, is 3 of the 4 games played this year, Wilson has used 9 receivers. He's thrown the ball to 9 different receivers. That's impressive. However, again, that's because they're a team that has to constantly try to score because their defense is not good. So I see DK Metcalf playing well. I should also mention that I like him the most of anyone in the Seattle wide receiver core. It's not even close. So next up on the slate, I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson, rookie wide receiver for the Vikings. He comes in at $10,000. The first 2 games of the year, he was not utilized that much in the Vikings offense. And obviously, you can tell by the stats of the last 2 games, the Vikings coaching staff made a determined effort to get him more involved over the last 2 games, because over the last 2 games, he has 11 receptions and 278 receiving yards. He has the ability to break one long, a 75 to 90-yard touchdown is not at all possible without reason. He can absolutely do that. He's got big playability. It should also be noted about that bad Seahawks defense and this big playability that Jefferson has. There's a correlation here to what he may be able to do this evening. The Seahawks, through 4 games, have allowed 9 plays of over 25 yards. That's a lot. That's not good. Lastly, on FanDuel, I'm going to roll with a low-cost play that I think is really, sometimes you get these slates and you don't really find a value at the low cost, but you definitely do here. Greg Olsen, he's another guy that the first 2 games was not utilized much. However, the last 2 games of the year, he has been utilized more. He was targeted 13 times over the last 2 weeks, and he turned those 13 targets into 10 receptions that have resulted in 96 receiving yards. He is without a doubt the best low-cost play on the slate, in my opinion. So that's a quick look at tonight's game from Seattle. One thing I should mention to DFS people out there is, yes, Kirk Cousins has struggled in prime time. He may be 0-10 for all I know. He has not really played well under the bright lights. However, remember, there's going to be no fans in Seattle. The pressure is not going to be the same as it would be when there's 80 to 90,000 Seahawks fans. Now, does he choke under the bright lights knowing the game is a nationally televised primetime game? I can't say for sure, but I do think the fans not being there helps him. I also think the poor defense he faces helps him. I did not list him in the flex plays, but if you're doing 50 lineups, et cetera, and in GPP, you definitely want to have some Kirk Cousins, okay? Because this game has the potential to become a shootout as well. So there you go. Those are my main flex plays. Some other thoughts I have on the game. I think it will be an outstanding game from a DFS perspective. This is not going to be a Titans-Washington football team game of 10-3. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. Should be highly entertaining. So there you go. Take care. In a few days, I'll be getting back on here and talking to you about the CJ Cup from Shadow Creek. Take care.